Hey guys, Brent Build Show, talking today about the Victorian style. Remember, we're in the Victorian era. Queen Victoria's on her throne. There are a number of different styles of architecture within that Victorian period, right? So there's Queen Anne, there's Second Empire, there's Italianate, right? What we're going to look at today is kind of some of the typical details that show up in a Queen Anne or a Victorian house, okay? And so we're going to look at where they come from, what the details are, and then we're going to dig into a salvaged room, and I'm going to show you some of the tricks and details of how to put together a Victorian room today on the Build Show. Okay guys, so Victorian moldings, right? We're in the Victorian period, right? This is the Victorian era. We're talking about Victorian architecture broken up with a number of different styles. So we talked about how in the Industrial Revolution, right, the industrial change that takes place, we go from a custom to a handmade. And I talked about standardization, how that happens. Well, here's a good example, okay? I've got three molding catalogs, 1892, 1892, 1897, okay? What do you notice about these three books, right? Well, they all have basically the same cover, okay? It's a hardbound book. It was published by Rand McNally, yes, the map people, right? They published this book, and they're virtually exactly the same. However, this one's from Omaha, Nebraska, St. Louis, Missouri, Dubuque, Iowa, right? So all over the Midwest, right, everybody's using the same book. That's why I said we could have the same moldings in Fort Worth that we have in Chicago, right? Because everybody's using the same book, standardization. Now, one of the things that they do in these books is they have corner blocks, plinth blocks, header blocks. How do you know the difference? How are they used, right? And if you look inside these books, especially in the 1890s, you see a lot of decoration and detail. So when you get into, here are plinth blocks, okay? And here are header blocks, wood head blocks, right? Some of these are very ornate and very kind of crazy, right? We have built these for various clients over time, and you see some of these different details that we've done where we've made them, okay? Now the other thing you notice is this scale, okay? This is a wood header block. This is from a courthouse we did. That is 5 and, you know, almost 7/8, almost 6 inches wide, right? So the moldings are very heavy and thick. This is a plinth block, a decorative plinth block. Now, look at the difference between the header blocks and the plinth blocks, okay? And you might be, well, how do you know which one's which? The header blocks, you know, if you look at them on edge, right? This can't carry a molding, right? There's no molding that can sit down on this. This one is wide enough where the molding can sit right down on top of it. And so this would have been something at the top, and we'll look at that in a little bit. Here's another header block, kind of finishes really small at the top so you know that it goes up high, but they tend to be very decorative. Now, the moldings of this period are also unique in that they are, I call them symmetrical moldings, and what that means is that they kind of one side matches the other. Now this is some good examples of some Victorian casings where, you know, this one has 4 beads, but it has the same beveled edge on either side. This one has a loop with 2 beads in it, a loop with 1 bead, right? So they're symmetrical, they're balanced, they you know, come and sit up underneath the corner blocks and head blocks. It was a Victorian way of building. Now, looking at all this, and if it seems confusing, I actually, when I was writing my book on historic millwork, one thing I found is that starting with these early catalogs in the 1890s up into the 1940s, they were standardized, okay? So what that meant was that as design changed, as the Victorian moldings turned to arts and crafts moldings, moldings fell out of this book and new moldings were introduced. And so what I did was I put together a molding catalog that basically chronicles and dates when moldings were available in the catalogs. So it's a really, it's a good thing because it'll describe the casing, it'll say from what period it is, it'll describe what it looks like, it'll decide, you know, what kind of house it would have been in. So if you're interested in this, info@brenthull.com. Would love to send you one. I think they're $10. You might be able to find them on Amazon as well. So what I did was, instead of making up a molding in a section, I decided the best thing would be go to an architectural salvage yard and just buy a leg, okay, that has a plinth block, that has a header block, that has a molding and a casing, pretty typical to the era, and just show you how they did this. Now, it's very interesting to me because moldings like this give you a lot of design clues. First of all, notice that the plinth block is set on top of the casing, right? I noticed this plinth block was meant to catch a casing. This plinth block actually is mounted on top of the molding so that you see the two moldings there. A couple different ways of doing this, right? You have the symmetrical molding here, and look what you've got on the edge here. Look that you've got a shadow line, right? And so that shows us what size our base was, right? And so we can look at this and go, our base was, 11 inches tall. Right? So we can sit there and go, okay, yeah, so the size and scale of these things has grown quite a bit. This molding is 5.5 inches wide. Notice too, we've got a stop chamfer, right? Well, this is a pretty slick little thing because basically you're building this up and then you're applying this stop chamfer, and notice it goes all the way to the top, and then that stop chamfer stops here right before the header block comes in. Basically this gives us design clues then. Now, notice that I had this at this level here, right? I'm putting this molding on here, right? And I've got a 6/8 door, and I got that because I measured up to this point, right, where another molding dies into it, gets this, and then you've got another molding at the top there. So basically what happens is, we know with this situation, there would have been a molding going across here, and then another one at the top, and it would have had a transom light above this, okay? So we're going to actually mimic that and put that together, show you kind of how that looks. Now, I've got some rooms back here that show how this is put together, and this one has a wainscot, which is what we're going to copy. So basically what happens is, the way we're going to do this is, we got a really tall base, so we'll scoot a base over here, and I'm using a Windsor base here. I'm actually going to take some beadboard. Now, beadboard is a really very common, it was almost like plywood back then, that they would take beadboard and use it almost the way we would use plywood, right? You can start to get the feel for how a Victorian room might look, right? With a really pretty wainscot, a decorative backband or cap, beadboard, alternating beadboards, right? The base, a really tall base, kind of all part of that same tradition. Got a transom light above a door, symmetrical moldings, got header blocks, plinth blocks, all these elements that are put together to make a Victorian room. Now, if you're trying to recreate a Victorian for yourself today, remember a couple things that'll make it better, okay? The scale of these moldings is quite large, okay? You can't use a little 3.5-inch casing with a little small little rosette or corner block and expect to accomplish the right look. It's the heft and scale of these moldings that I think makes them successful. Two, if you are doing this stuff, remember more is better, right? Because a lot of these things are not simple, okay? There is a lot of different moldings, a lot of different woodworks, a lot of different profiles and design which are part of this element. And the scale, right? The heights of these rooms, the transoms, the hardware, all the crazy different things they were doing kind of make it difficult or make it challenging to reproduce properly today. Look, if you guys are interested in this catalog, right, just let us know, info@brenthall.com. You can pick these up. There's a lot of great historical information about moldings in there. I encourage you to begin to collect and look at this stuff. It's really unique and fun, I think. As a woodworker, as a craftsman, it's very challenging. So enjoy this thing. Thanks for watching. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Sign up for the newsletter. I'm Brent Hall. Thanks for watching.